Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you might be zooming in from. Welcome to this week's Markham webinar. Today we're going to look at risk reduction in concrete construction. Have you guys ever had issues on your sites with quality control or build quality that's opened you up for more risks or more frustration on site? Well, today we're going to look into some of the things that we see on building sites and some of the ways that we can help out with mitigating these risks. So please welcome Doug Hamlin. Doug Hamlin's zooming in from Auckland, New Zealand. He's been with the company for a long time, got a lot of experience with this subject, so feel free to hit him up with any questions you might have. And myself, Brad Fulcher, I am zoomed in from Sydney, Australia. I predominantly look after the sunny state of Queensland. So down the bottom, as you'll be well aware, there's a Q&A button. Please put in any questions you have during this short presentation. We will have time at the end to go through these questions and hopefully answer them and help you guys out with any needs on your projects. And just before we kick off, we'll just do a quick welcome poll. If you can share a little bit about who you are, what your background is, that'll help us immensely. Thank you. Just give you a few more seconds to get those responses in. All right, great. There's still a few more people jumping on board. So, thanks everyone for filling out that poll. It looks like a lot of you are interested in new innovations, new technologies. So we'll definitely be diving into that a bit later on, which is great. So first of all, some of the learning outcomes from this webinar. So we're going to talk about the concrete construction and the risk involved, some of the things that we see. We're going to look at how to reduce these risks in the construction phase. And then we're also going to have a look at maintenance, so the long-term maintenance and being proactive about that as well is an important thing, so reducing the risk that way. So some of the modern construction challenges that we see, and no doubt you guys see as well on site. So these are very common. Most of them have been around for a while, but in this current situation at the moment we find ourselves in, they have been sort of highlighted, if you like. So the first one is schedules. So we're really seeing a lot of these getting tighter and tighter. Lost time during the COVID period, so the last couple of years, is obviously not helping that. So a major thing people are looking at is how can we be faster, smarter, those sort of things. Then we've got the material costs and the client cost expectations. So this is mainly around builders in a contract versus their material costs going up, as you know. So major consideration. And then labour shortages as well. So being able to get the right labour with the right qualifications, the right amount of experience, those sort of things is becoming harder and harder as the labour pool dries up. So this does result in some quality control challenges, unfortunately. So we see a result, for instance, if we have a shortage of a particular material, this can be substituted out for a different material, but it doesn't always mean you'll get the same result at the end. So these sort of things, while we can't do a lot about, the building has to move forward, and we have to do what we can to keep this moving. It does pay to do a bit of research into that, things like labour as well, trying to get the right qualifications of people that are on there. This can be a prime result that the building may not end up to be designed as it was at the start. So something we can look into. Over to you, Doug, for a look into how this affects concrete.
Sure thing. Thanks, Brad. It was a good overview there. So obviously we at Markham, everything we do are involved in concrete. We couldn't really do a webinar without discussing concrete. So in terms of structural concrete, obviously it's a very key material. It's still used, very, very staple building construction material. But what's often connected with concrete when things go wrong is, the visual effects. So if a concrete floor is, honeycombed or cracked or whatever it may be, we often, there's a lot of complaints about the visuals and how can we get them looking right. But what's not always thought about or connected is the long-term durability. So when a concrete cracks, it can let, over time, it can let contaminants in through that concrete. Now, normally there's enough cover concrete covering the reinforcing steel to protect it against those. But where you've got poor concrete quality, that process or that deterioration process speeds up essentially and can lead to premature deterioration. Some of the other issues we see come about due to poor curing quality. So more often, or far too often, we see that curing is left out or not given full consideration. And this is not just us as product suppliers saying this. This is in all the engineering handbooks on concrete, that curing a concrete is very, very important to the long-term quality of that concrete. And it basically is because if you don't get that concrete hydrated properly, you can lose out on strength, obviously, but you can result in shrinkage cracking or excessive shrinkage cracking, that type of thing. Now, another area that we see quite often is congested reinforcing. So in the likes of pile cages or column reinforcing cages, and they're very, very congested. And then when the concrete's poured in there, they can move. Only has to move a few millimeters, and that results in a low cover to the reinforcing steel. Now, just on that, it's on the cover concrete. Its main purpose is to protect that reinforcing steel from deterioration or from rusting, which obviously leads to spalling, that type of thing. So if that cover concrete is compromised and it's not remediated, that can lead to that long-term or shortened service life, if you like, of the concrete. Should move on to the next one. The other area we see is, I guess you could say it needs more input in construction planning, is the construction joint layout and doing all we can to mitigate random cracking on concrete slabs. So whether that's by a detailed saw cut plan on a slab pour before the pours even happen, or being smart around things like re-entry corners around columns, that type of thing. And what happens if you don't do proper planning around this area, is you end up with a random cracking pattern, like a map cracking pattern, and it's much harder to remediate. It doesn't look good visually, and it's much better to have a planned nice straight line in a saw cut or a construction joint that you can seal properly. It's much easier to seal something that's in a straight line versus a crack that follows a random pattern across the slab. So on that, just one more point is that if with the cracking again, I mentioned it earlier, I really want to touch on it, is if you do leave a concrete slab with cracks in it, that fast tracks that contamination or the pathways for contamination to get into the concrete and starts that corrosion process of the reinforcing steel off quicker. So, I mean, you see it a lot on construction sites, a rust stain coming out of a construction joint or a crack, something like that. And often it's happening long before the building's actually even finished. So if we can move on to the next slide there. I think that's your one, Brad.
Yeah, thanks for that, Doug. So there are a couple more other areas that we do see challenges as well in the industry. So one of those is waterproofing. So just a quick overview or a quick stat there. So it can cost as little as 3% of the project, but can be up to 80% of the remediation costs. So when we're thinking waterproofing, saving that one day or a couple of dollars on site can actually be can actually have a big effect further down the track. So important that we do get this right. Another thing we see in the industry more and more is a lot of new ideas coming through. So new ideas bring new challenges. So a lot of these around sustainability, the environment, environmentally friendly products and systems, which is great. It's good news. But we do need to be careful. We do need to be making sure we're really looking into these ideas and these systems, making sure they are fit for purpose, and making sure the end result's the same. So as these are new ideas, we're still learning about the longer term impacts, which we can change over time. And then there's maintenance. So we're seeing this more and more as costs are getting tighter. Maintenance or ongoing maintenance is one of the first things people seem to drop off on. So rather than expecting a structure, twice or whatever their normal pattern is, twice a year, they're doing it once a year, things like that, trying to save those dollars there. But it does mean you've got to pay those dollars somewhere. So whether you save it now or spend it later, it doesn't change. One of the things that we often talk about is De Sitter's Law of Five. So this goes through the process of getting in early, finding those issues or looking for signs that issues could be happening early, coming up with a system to remediate them, and then at the back end of the project or at the back end of the lifespan, we are saving that money there. So it's a fairly simple idea, but it does show that by getting in early, we can really do a lot to save money, to save our carbon footprint and the rebuild costs by doing that extra due diligence at the early stage.
Yes, and also on that, the de-sitters law of fives, it may not necessarily be spending, extra funds or that. It may be just having a bit more, planning, getting everyone together to discuss and, plan before a concrete pour or whatever that may be, or put in a plan for maintenance. Do you think?
Yeah, 100% true. So whether it's time, money, or whatever resource that you put in at the start can save you that resource at the end. Doug, do you want to take us through some of the systems we use?
Yeah, so I obviously want to touch on how we can assist with reducing, this risk in concrete. So the main area that we get involved in is with what we call concrete hydrogels. Now, in concrete, as it's formed, so when you place concrete, there's a certain amount of water that's used to mix the concrete that forces its way out of the concrete. So it evaporates essentially and leaves pathways through the concrete matrix. Now, what the hydrogel does is, whether that's mixed into the concrete or whether that's spray applied, is it reacts with the moisture and the alkalinity in those porosities and forms a gel and stops that moisture movement, if you like, or stops that contamination, or stops those pathways for contamination from being able to transport them through the concrete. So that these blue lines that used to be able to transport moisture can no longer, as they are essentially locked up in the hydrogel. With the hydrogels we work with, they are colloidal silica hydrogels, so we're not putting anything foreign or new into concrete. Silica's been in concrete since time was, or since concrete was used, and so it's a very safe in terms of compatibility, in terms of strength, long-term effects, and contributes to extending that life of the concrete. Go to the next one there, Brendan.
Just a quick reminder to keep putting those questions down the bottom. We'll get to them at the end. Thanks, all.
Thanks, Brad. So another area we can assist is in waterproofing. So Brad mentioned at the start, or partway through the webinar there, that waterproofing accounts for 80% of the issues relating to building defects. It's a huge cost. You don't have to go too many days to see another article in the paper about some leaky building, which is not good. So our system looks at as a three-part system that we're involved in from right the way through. So that's from design, sitting down with the consultants, right the way through to the on-site installation of the product of the system. And that includes an admixture inside the concrete, includes a spray applied treatment as a backup to the surface, and then most importantly, the joint layouts and detailing. So mitigating that cracking risk and making sure that those joints are waterproof. It's probably the most common area that causes issues with waterproofing. Next slide. Yeah, and just lastly, probably the main thing, you don't always see it. It's not something physically or not tangible, but it is our end-to-end service that Markham provides. I mentioned from design right the way through to on-site. That's something we really are proud of. We really push. So making sure that only approved applicators can put our products on site, making sure all the joint detailing, everything is signed off. And then so at the end of the project, we give you a performance-based warranty that says that we're happy with the concrete quality, we're happy with the waterproofing detailing, and we can provide you with a meaningful performance warranty for whatever the agreed warranty term is. And so that fits in with your asset management, and takes that risk away from you as a consultant, asset owner, whatever it may be. So that's brings us to the end of our webinar today. Appreciate any questions. There's some questions coming there. If there's any further ones, email Brad or myself. Email addresses are on the screen there. Or otherwise, just jump on our website when the time arises that you need to talk to us, and we can get in touch. Brad, do you want to have a look at that first question?
Great, thanks, Doug. It's actually probably one more for you. So you talked about it earlier. So it's you mentioned low cover issues. Tell us more about fixing that problem.
Yeah, sure thing. So low cover is something that is often checked in the construction process, and it happens. Yeah, obviously it's not a nice or topic that anyone really likes to talk about. But basically, what we can do is spray apply on some of the hydrogel. There's a couple of different options there, and it increases the durability of that cover concrete by essentially waterproofing it, so that what in terms of permeability of the concrete, in terms of durability, a concrete that may have let through, say, just for numbers' sake, say 100 mils of water over a certain time period, only lets through 50 mils. So the permeability is effectively halved there. So flipping that around the other way, if you say you had 25 mils of cover and you needed 35, that once it's treated, the equivalent cover becomes 25. Equivalent cover becomes 50 mils of concrete. So that's is any more on that one, Brad?
No, that's good. So essentially, it's making the cover do the job that it was meant to do in the first place, which is protecting that, reinforcing from the elements.
Mm-hmm.
Another question, how do hydrogen treatments delay construction schedules, or do they? Is there any significant downtime after application? I'll start off on this one. Doug can chip in. So depending on which or what treatment we're doing, it can affect it, but in the main, there's very, very limited downtime. So most of the hydrogel treatments go down at cure stage. And as Doug mentioned earlier, part of our approach is that we do the installation as well, which means we've got a very flexible team. Essentially, once the concrete is finished on site, will be in there that afternoon. Get it applied that afternoon. The next day when you come back on site, there's no difference that you need to do as far as treating the slab. It's ready to go as per normal. In a retrofit, same situation. We'll get access to the concrete. For example, for a low cover area, our applicators obviously need access to the concrete. Spray our treatments an hour after we're sprayed. You can just carry on as normal. So very, very limited downtime, very, very low cure time as well.
Another one there, Brad, I think you might as well carry on, is how do you manage the risk with compatibility with other products or other systems in concrete, that go get applied to concrete, or I guess the meaning there?
Yeah, good question. So it is important that we do make sure anything we're doing is compatible. If it's not looked into, it can cause big issues further down the track. So the first thing, or the good news, is that the Acron hydrogel treatments are compatible with basically anything that's designed to be used on bare concrete. As when Doug was going through there, he mentioned we don't add anything foreign to the concrete, and we're also penetrating. So we don't change the surface of the concrete at all. So all your typical epoxies, line marking, or silicons, things like that, if you're waterproofing around those sort of areas, is all compatible. But it is very important that you do your research on any products you're using, making sure that they're not going to trip you up or slow you down later down in the path of the construction.
One of the classic areas there is like a curing compound. Obviously looks cheap on pour date, but it looks very expensive when you get to that floor covering time and it needs to be removed prior to floor coverings, things being put down. It catches too many people out. It's almost painful to get those calls asking if we can help.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Very simple. Just a quick look into it at that time would save them. So you're probably talking about a 10-minute research, save them $20 per square meter grind. Do you know, there's another one on there about the warranties. What sort of warranties is offered for the different treatments?
Yeah, so it is a performance warranty. So it's offered on a square meter result, if you like. So, and it varies for each system or product that we put forward or install. Generally, on a new project, we match the design life if we can get involvement in the design and the detailing, that sort of thing. On, say, if it's a retro treating situation or remediation, we may pull that back a bit, just obviously based on the condition, the structure, the environment that it's in, that type of thing. But it is always a result that's warranted, and if it needs, if it's not performing as it is, we'll get in there and fix it up, rather than just supply you more products or replacement product, that type of thing.
It's got to be measurable as well, doesn't it? So when we're talking warranties, we have a benchmark or something that we're actively comparing it to.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I don't think there's any more questions coming there, Brad. So it's been a good session today. Hopefully it's been helpful for the audience there.
Thank you everyone for joining. Please feel free to reach out. Our emails are up there, or just phone or the website if you do have any further questions.
Cool. See you later.